Good day, everyone, and welcome. This is Power Talks with the Talk Doctor, featuring Ask the Talk Doctor Live. I'm your host, Dr. Dacia, and I am so glad to say it is Friday. Yes, my favorite time of the week. I'm exceptionally excited because we have a dynamic and wonderful show prepared for you all today. Why don't you go ahead and check in the comment box if you're on YouTube or Instagram and tell us where you're joining us from. We hope that you'll leave your comments and your questions today because we have an absolutely astounding show prepared for you today. So if you're wondering, because you're here for the first time, what exactly is Power Talks with the Talk Doctor featuring Ask the Talk Doctor Live? It's a weekly show that addresses relevant topics on health, mental health, and wellness and other matters of life. People can gain support, resources, or just a place to be in the moment and decompress. This show is divided into two segments. A Power Talks with me, the Talk Doctor, and my guest. And then we go into your wonderful questions that you continue to send us, and we try to unpack them as best we can. Now, remember, you can send your questions to us at askthetalkdoctorlive@gmail.com. And we'll anonymously announce the questions here on the show, keeping your confidence, but making sure that we answer those questions that are so relevant and can really help other people who are actually seeking help in the various subject matters. Well, we have a great show for you today, and I am just so super excited because we're talking about a topic that touches each and every one of our lives at some point or another. We're talking about finding happiness after a loss. It's a club most people wish they never have to join, but unfortunately, we don't have any control over when we will make the membership list. We just know that at some point, we will. So dealing with a significant loss can be quite painful, traumatic, life-changing. And for those left behind to grieve the loss of a loved one, it sometimes can be very difficult. Losing a loved one can be devastating. It can leave you feeling shocked, lost, abandoned, confused, sometimes even in a trance, maybe feeling rather stressed with lots of confusions, questions, and prolonged grief. You should know without the proper time to process through the emotions is heavy, it's weighty, it can weigh you down, and it can lead to depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. So it's important to give yourself permission to talk about your loss, whether it be with a trusted friend or maybe you find more formal supports. And at the end of this broadcast, we're going to put up some resources on the screen for you that you can see that help is readily available. So no matter where you're joining us from across the United States, nationally, even internationally, you can find help in your local area. So without further delay, I want to tell you about my guest today. My guest today is Dion Whitaker Moore. She's a software engineer, mother of 2 adult sons, and a woman of faith. She's here in studio with me today and is sharing her journey of loss and grief for the first time with the Talk Doctor. Now, let me set this up a little bit for you. I ran into Dion a few months ago at church, and I noticed that there was something different about her. I was aware that she had lost her husband some years back, and many of you who have joined us on this show before, you remember that I publicly announced that I lost my father at the beginning of this year and how painful that was for me as well. So when I saw her, it was just like there was this spark in her eye. I immediately knew that there was something different about her. So I learned through our conversation that she had lost her husband 7 years and 7 months to this date. There's something about that number 7. Dion calls the day that her husband went and passed the worst day of she and her children's life. You see, she and her beloved Winton had been married for 20 years, but they were together for 26 beautiful years. She recalls that when Winton died on March 5th, 2015, at about 2 a.m., the Camelot train that they had been riding for the last 26 years of their life was suddenly derailed, and it went entirely off tracks of unknown destination. And she and her children were now barreling down a totally different track to an unknown destination, and they felt very scared and abandoned. Maybe you today have experienced a loss and you share similar symptoms. So I'd like to go ahead and ask you all to welcome to this show today my guest, Dion Whitaker Moore. Hi there,
Hello.
Dion. Welcome.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, and welcome to Power Talks with the TalkDr.
Thank you for inviting
Have
me.
a seat. Absolutely. So you shared with me that it was October 5th.
March 5th.
March
Yes.
5th.
Mm-hmm.
But on October 5th made 7
That's
years
it.
and 7 months
That's
since
correct.
you lost
That's
your husband,
correct.
right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I wonder if you could take us back to the first weeks after you lost Winton. What was that time like for you?
It was more of a trance, or kind of like a dream that you're not waking from. So there's a lot of movement going around, but you don't feel like you're part of it. So I guess surreal.
Mm-hmm.
And is it possible that you're having a dream?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, in the past, and I'm sure a lot of people have had this, where you dream something and then you wake up,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still in the dream.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's what it felt like you were in a dream, and it was going to get better.
Mm.
It had to, because death is so not a part of, if you haven't experienced death from so closely with someone, it doesn't seem like it's a part of your world.
Mm-hmm.
It's a part of someone else's world.
Mm-hmm.
Or it happens to old people who are
Mhm.
supposed to die, right?
Mhm.
They've lived their long term.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't happen to a 46-year-old man who has children and you have a happy family. It doesn't happen to us. So I felt like it was just not part of my reality.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that. And especially when you share with us this surreal feeling, oftentimes people spend a lot of time in this shock mode, and it can really feel like this is not happening. Somebody pinch me, I'm going to wake up from a really bad dream. How did this loss change your life?
Well, the interesting part is that I lost my husband in 2015. So it was a process of I was very angry at God. I used to teach a Sabbath school class, and I immediately quit that because I felt like I couldn't lie to the kids about God being good because he wasn't good, is how I felt.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if he were good, he would have saved him. Because we had people from different churches. My husband and I, in our lifetime, had gone to Capitol Hill, and we gone to Brinklow. And so those different elders and friends of his from Oakwood and Pine Forge had come and prayed over him and anointed oil and all that, and he still didn't live.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay. So God's only good to some people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was angry about that. And then within a 2-year span, I lost my father, and then I lost my husband passed in 15, and my father passed in 16, and then his parents who lived with us, they passed in 16 as well. So for my kids, they lost everyone except for mommy within 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost my husband, and then my support, my father.
Yes.
And then, for my kids, their grandparents. And I was close with his parents also, but not like my husband, not like my father and my husband.
Yes.
So it was a lot of loss. So each loss made me know that God really just was sometimey.
Mm-hmm.
He saved people if he wanted to. But I think I had an understanding of God that was not real. My understanding was more fairy tale-ish, because that's what I had experienced in my lifetime. I pray and I get it.
Yes.
I pray for the job, I get it. I pray for the house, I get it. I pray for the car, for the salary increase, for the man to love and adore me, and I got all those things. So I thought that God answers prayers.
Yeah.
But my idea of who he was not real.
Yeah, I can understand that. And she's certainly sharing with us, what's very classic in the grief process. Immediately after somebody loses someone, you can go through a period of denial, where you're just sitting in disbelief and shock. And for some people, it can last for a period of time. They're still not connecting the dots that this is happening. But I also heard her talk about another stage of grief and loss, and that is the anger. And it's not uncommon that if you're a person of faith, to even be angry at the God you serve, God, in this case, and to be angry for a long time. And she is talking about not just one significant loss, but after that, what followed were other significant losses. And so you can imagine the emotions that continue to stir. And, the anger gets even more, so where you get to the point where you're just like, I don't care. What's the point? And speaking of, I don't care, because many of the patients that I counsel, I find them in that place where they just don't care about anything else. It's like, what's the point? Some people even unfortunately go through periods of feeling suicidal because it's just like, why am I here anyway if I have to live with this pain? And it's hard. It's unfortunate. I want to ask about the grief reactions, because those follow as well. So in other words, the people around you, the people who, may be well-intentioned and they care about you and they want to check up on you, but I'm angry. Let's talk a little bit about those reactions that you might have had.
I wanted to go back a little bit when you said being suicidal. I can truly say that for me, if it weren't for my children, I think I would have probably tried to kill myself. But because there was no reason to live anymore.
Yeah.
We were a unit and the unit was gone.
Yeah.
But I didn't want my kids to suffer anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It would be devastating. And I just thought about the future they would not have if they lost their father and their mother. So they saved me.
Yeah.
But the comments that people said were, I think that the way I was raised growing up in my faith is that, for the morning, you'll see him in a little while, you're going home, but you'll see him at the welcome table and all that stuff that you hear. Those are just cliches. And so I think that I was not raised in my faith to mourn presently or to be allowed to mourn because you're going to see him later on, right? Or so they say. And so people would say things like, girl, he's in a better place. Or, he's not in pain anymore. Or, God is your lover now. And crazy stuff like that. Or people would avoid me. And I would be angry and didn't want to talk to them when I realized what they were doing. But as time went on, I realized people just don't know what to say.
Yes.
When my husband's best friend died, and when I saw his wife, she was coming in the bathroom and I hid. I put my feet up on the toilet so she couldn't see my feet because I didn't know what to say to her.
Yeah.
So I understand that death is just not something that people know what to say or do. But the best thing to do is to just listen to what I have to say and sit with me and hug me and hold me, but don't give me any advice. Don't give anyone any advice because there is no advice. There's nothing to be said. Can I do anything? Do you need anything? Yes, bring my husband back. If you can't do that, then I don't need anything from you.
Yeah, and I completely get that. I understand that because for the person who is going through that deep pain that they're feeling within, they don't want to hear things like, he's in a better place. You'll see her again. I remember one person saying to me, if one person tells me again that he's in a better place, the better place is right here with me.
That's correct.
And that's real for a lot of people. And so if you're listening today and there's somebody in your life where you may be the one going through the loss or somebody else is, and you're struggling to figure out what to say, this is really great advice. Sometimes just being with the person and sitting silently is more than enough. And I also heard you when you said, oftentimes people come around and they say, well, is there anything I can do for you? Let me know what I can do for you. And when you're grieving, I don't know what that is.
Right. There's nothing you can do for me. What you can do is just show up at the house, ring the doorbell. If no one answers, call. If no one answers, try again 2 days later. Just show up and come in and start washing dishes, cleaning clothes, making up the bed, cooking food.
Yes.
The person's not going to say get out. They're just
just sitting there in a trance, trying to trying to
don't make me
figure
have
out
to
life.
mourn and grieve and do all this stuff and then also tell you what I need
I've
from
got
you.
to think about what I want from you. I don't know what I want from you. Yeah, and I think that this is so true. Not just in the process of grief, but when people are going through situations, so they're in pain, they've just gotten out of the hospital, whatever the case may be. Often we make the mistake and say, "Let me know what you need." Well, I'm never going to let you know what I need, because guess what? I may be the person who does not like to ask for help or doesn't know how. But you're right. When you show up and you just automatically take control. And if I don't want you there, I'll ask you kindly to leave.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're there makes a whole world of difference. And we all have to get to that place where we're just okay with just doing it instead of waiting for somebody to tell you that that's what they need. Because you're right. It's hard enough on the person going through the pain that they're experiencing.
I think it's a way for a person who doesn't, I know they may not mean it that way, but I think it's a way to put responsibility on the person who's grieving. If you really wanted to do something, you would do it, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm not going to have another job of contacting you and tell you. Then later on you can say, "Oh wait, I never heard from you."
Right. Yeah. I got to take care of myself.
Right. Or when people said this to me, "Oh my goodness, he died. I didn't know. I didn't know. Why did you tell me?" Oh, I was supposed to call him. Hey, he died. Hey, he died. Send out like letters.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah. Don't put any responsibility on me right now.
Right.
Just catch me.
Right.
That's it.
Indeed. I agree with you. And when we talk about things that are not helpful, let's also dig into the things that were helpful. So what helped you in the process?
Time helped me in the process. Seeing a therapy, going to a group therapy, not right away. I didn't go like that first month or two, because I think that first month or two I still didn't believe, I still didn't understand what was going on, because I was still hurtling down the wrong track and in that that mode. But once I settled down and realized, okay, this is the way we're going, what do we do? Group therapy was good, one-on-one therapy. My kids didn't want to go and they begged not to, so they went to one or two, but then they didn't go anymore till later on. That helped. People just showing up helped. I'll never forget how helpful the women at the church were, coming over and doing things. That was very helpful. And also allowing myself, talking with my sister, and I was ashamed that I was mad at God. And so I didn't want to broach that. But she said, be mad, because God's love is not dependent upon your response to him. He loves you regardless. Absolutely. And so that gave me freedom to continue to, honestly, I felt like I hated God. But I didn't feel guilty, because I knew he loved me anyway. So that gave me the freedom to feel the way I wanted to. And then I came out of that feeling slowly over time. And then focusing on my kids' activities, trying to get out the house and exercise, but just the time of trying to understand how to be an adult without my partner. Because I met him at 19. So now I'm a fully formed adult. I don't know how to operate without him.
And that's significant. I think that, the longer that you've been with a person, particularly if you've sort of grew up with them, there are many people who were high school sweethearts or, young adult sweethearts. And then you get into adulthood and, you kind of formed a lot of, through your developmental process with this person. And now what do I do? This partner that I've known, that have journeyed with me thus far, is no longer here. And I think one of the things that I want to point out, to those listening, because I think that this is really important, that you talked about your children asking permission not to go to counseling. And though, as a therapist, I would wholeheartedly tell anyone, that if you are in that space to go process your emotions, whether with a counselor, a coach, a licensed professional, it should always be a licensed professional. But when you're ready,
Right.
you can't go see someone if you're not ready. So nobody can force you into counseling. Nobody can tell you, oh, you need counseling. You're pushing us away. You're angry. You have to be ready.
Yeah, and that's what I was doing because I'm an action person. I was like, gotta do this, gotta do that, and they weren't.
Yeah.
And staying busy helps. What else helps is staying busy. So my husband didn't tell me to get my master's for years. And I wish I had when he was alive, but I went to graduate school, got my master's. And I was like, he would have been proud. And I just did a lot of things, staying busy. I went to work, I was out for like a month, 2 months, but I wish I'd gone back sooner just because staying busy helps you not focus so much. It's going to hit you. You can't avoid it.
Yes.
You can be driving down the freeway and, but being at home and not doing anything. If you weren't working, try to find something to do. If it's crochet, I don't know, macrame, something to keep you busy. Otherwise, you'll obsess and you'll turn into a guilt type of, because you have to blame someone. And when you're done blaming God, the next person you're going to blame is you or whoever.
Yeah, I hear you. I agree with that. So in terms of, when we go into the idea of talking about your turning point, because, this theme is titled Finding Happiness After a Loss. And depending on where you are in the stages of grief and loss, some people can't see that light. Like there is absolutely no light. I'll never find happiness.
Yes.
I'll never find joy. And I've heard people say that, to me before. But tell us what your turning point was. When did hope and happiness enter your mind and show up as a possibility, or even show up in your behavior?
What I'll say is this. It's not happiness as you knew it. So it's a different happiness. So that happiness you had pre-Winton will never exist again. So that was buried with him. So you have to develop a different type of happiness. And what it is, if you're trying to go back in time to get that thing you had, you'll continue to always feel like you're missing it because you can't go back and dig it up, right? Otherwise, it'll pull you down into the grave, right? So you have to form a new type of happiness at a different level with your new environment. You're hurtling down this track. You still don't know the destination, but you have to be at peace with that. And acceptance, accepting that he was gone and he was never coming back. It was the acceptance of he's never coming back. And when I felt myself spiraling, I had to stop and say, he's never coming back. And that was very hard. But once I accepted that, then there was a shift. So because my past was my future. The boys are going to go away to college, and me and Winton were going to retire and do this and this and that. But my past was buried. So now I had to stop looking back and start looking forward. Once I realized that that's not coming back, I can't be my future. That's when I start to create a future. And when that happened, then I start to turn. And I didn't know I was turning. Like, I don't even see it now. You see it, my sister sees it. But I think it was when I felt that, well, that was then. Now I must create something for my future because my kids are going to be gone. So what's going to be of me, right? Once I thought about that, then it started. And whenever I felt myself being pulled back, which still happens, I say, he's not coming back. What would he want me to do? I don't know, but he would want me to be happy.
Yes, indeed.
So
I think that's so powerful what you're sharing with us. You're actually journeying through all of the stages of grief and loss, and the very last one is acceptance. When you get to that place of acceptance, and some people, they can't fathom the thought of acceptance because they feel like acceptance means forgetting about that person, and that's a myth. For acceptance does not mean that you will forget. Acceptance means peace. With the idea that the person, it's permanent. They're not coming back.
I have pictures all around still. I have less and less of them, only because some pictures pull me back down, right? But I've had pictures of him with the boys, and I try to focus more on his life and our life
Yes.
versus his death.
Yes.
Because for about a year or two, all I could focus on was how he looked in the hospital bed a few
Mhm.
seconds before the heart monitor went down.
Mm.
You know, I just keep on seeing that and how he looked, and it took me a while to get that out of my image.
Yes.
So then I said, how can his whole 46 years be contained in a hospital bed? It's
Right.
not. What about everything before?
What about everything
Then I
before?
start remembering stuff I had forgotten.
Mhm.
Remember that time in college, words that only he and I know, just remembering things fondly,
Yes.
and just smiling about them and saying, I have that memory that I can share with my grandkids
Yes.
or with my kids.
Yes. Yes.
You know, so that's when the acceptance of that past memory, remember it well, but it's gone.
Mhm.
But you can bring it up when you need to.
Yeah.
And I still get pulled back sometimes.
Absolutely. Because these stages, they're not clean. I tell
No.
people all the time, you know, you go through the denial, the bargaining, the anger, the depression, the acceptance. Oh, wait, I'm back at angry again. I thought that I got through this, but so it's not really that fluid, although it's, you know, it's expressed that way, but we can find ourselves because we're human, you know, human with emotions.
Mhm.
It's important for us to give ourselves grace and understand that there will be triggers, there will be periods when you will go back to that place.
Right.
But I think the powerful thing that I'm hearing you express to all of us is the choice.
Mhm.
The choice to smile instead of be sad about a memory because the person isn't here.
Right.
The choice to say that I'm going to keep the pictures up because this person was so much more
Yeah.
than what they were in that hospital
Yeah,
bed or
yeah.
wherever I lost them.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Because, you know, if the person were here, you know, one thing I learned to do is I'm not going to tell anyone what they feel about their lost one. If you think they're floating, if you think they're sleeping, if you think they're under the bed, whatever you think, that will give you peace, right? But you do know that they would not want you to be sad forever,
Yes.
or they would not want you to think that their life consisted of that hospital bed.
Yes.
Like, what about all the other stuff we did?
It's true.
And I don't want my grandkids to know about the hospital bed.
Right.
I want them to know about all the other stuff, but I want my kids to know about all other stuff.
Yeah.
And so that part. And then also, I used to feel bad about things that, you know, you feel bad and you're guilty. You have to just move past that and say, hey,
Mhm.
stop feeling bad, because that's not going to help you move forward.
Yeah, indeed. Very good advice. Now, we know that the holiday season is coming up, and for those of us who have experienced loss and we have significant memories of the person or the people that we've lost, the holidays can be very triggering. Talk to us about the holidays, what that was like for you, and how do you anticipate, you know, this coming holiday season?
So the holidays are very hard, from September to March. Oh, and then March he died. So holidays are hard. Thanksgiving was my husband's favorite holiday because he's a cook, and people will come far and wide, relatives, to come to his food.
Mm-hmm.
So holidays were hard. Miles, Max, and I, you would think we would come together, but we always were missing someone. So we would go to our rooms. When we came home, we didn't do the whole, oh, no, because there was a fourth piece that wasn't there. I would mourn, they would mourn, we would, you know, mourn separately. So that first Thanksgiving was lonely and sad and awful. And so was the Christmas. But I remember the Garrisons invited us over, and we went over, and, you know, we were good friends with them. My husband and Rich were good friends. And other people who I thought would invite us over did not. And I was disappointed in that. But I didn't understand that when you lose someone, your friends lose someone too.
Yes.
So they have their way of mourning.
Yeah.
And sometimes seeing a sad woman who's going to cry with her children, because that's what I would have done, that's not enjoyable for them, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
but for those who did invite us over, we did eventually, you know, laugh and play games, and they consistently, every Thanksgiving and Christmas, would invite us over. So that helped. Someone inviting us over who had a relationship with him.
Yes.
So we could all talk about the memories.
Yes, absolutely.
So that helped. But not just sitting there by yourself, but you
Mhm.
have to, someone has to bring you into their world.
Right.
So someone and allow someone to.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I think I also hear you saying, give yourself the time and space that you might need.
That's
because
correct.
You're not always ready to go socialize.
Yeah.
And well-intentioned people might invite you over. Well-intentioned people might say, we want you here. And there are others who are also well-intentioned, but they don't verbalize that because they're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do if she cries.
That's correct.
Or I don't know what to do,
Or I'm sad too.
I'm sad too, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that you're absolutely right. Give yourself that space to be what you want to be, who you want to be, that I don't want anybody around me, I just want to be. But then when you're ready, allow that newness to unfold, that newness that you talked about, that allowing yourself to form new memories, beyond the person you love being there. Because yes, that is very difficult to stay in that spot or that space of feeling that this is what my Thanksgiving is always going to be because he's not here.
Right. Right. And people would invite us and I said no. And I believe someone came over with food anyway and brought there, and I was glad they did.
Yes.
Because they didn't allow me to stay there.
Because you have to eat too, don't you? At some point in time, you got to eat, even though, we know that sometimes that happens. There's loss of appetite and you can't sleep and those things. But self-care is also important during the grief and loss process, that we truly need to do so.
And make yourself sleep. That's important. I still struggle with that.
We have to do a whole, talk on sleep. It is one of the biggest things in my practice that people, they don't come with depression without sleep issues.
Correct.
Because of course it impacts your ability to either fall asleep, stay asleep, or both. So we need to do a talk on sleep.
I think grief takes about 4 hours off of your sleep.
Woo!
I don't know if you ever get it back.
Yes, and probably more. But they're giving us the cue that we need to wrap up. So now it's time to transition to the next segment of the show. Those of you who are always here, you know that this segment consists of the Q&A. I encourage you to put comments in the chat, your questions, what have you, if you have them. But one of our, and I hope you'll stick around to answer questions with me. So one of our viewers sent in a really interesting question. She says, "Dear Talk Doctor, I recently lost my mother and I'm dealing with a lot of guilt along with my grief. You see, I've not seen her in 5 years before she passed away. We had a very rocky relationship, and to protect my mental health, I had to put physical and emotional distance between us. I never imagined what it would be like if she passed away suddenly, and now the worst has happened. I'm left with a lot of questions, confusion, sadness, and of course, the guilt. How can I deal and move on?" Whew. Quite a question.
That's a hard one. That's for me?
Yes, quite a question. Well, we could do it together, but
start.
How about you start? Yes.
There's nothing you can do about the past. It will literally drive you crazy, like insane, asking questions that can't be answered. That person cannot, my husband was cremated. He's not coming up out the dust to answer your questions. Your mother's not going to answer your questions. You can't resolve the relationship. But moving forward, you can make better choices so that your relationships that are currently present will not replicate the one you had in the past. And when there's death, there's always guilt. Like, I should have, I could have, I would have, but you didn't know that they were dying because it's not part of your living the thought. So just to live presently in the present and make sure that you don't repeat the mistakes that were made, that you and your mother both made. Yeah. I like that answer. That's quite profound, because it really speaks to the fact that the guilt that you punish yourself with is not bringing the person back. It's not helping you. It's not going to help you. It's like a millstone tied to your neck each and every day, pulling you down. You got to when these happen, we are left with a myriad of emotions. And there are emotions that we do have to unpack, that we do have to process, that we do have to figure through. And like you said, I like what you said about the idea that think about who's here now. What relationships do I need to fix? And I get it, because I hear it and I see it every day, that there are some relationships here presently that you just can't fix, and you can't fix on your own. So you just have to resolve to say to yourself that
You know, I've made peace. I've forgiven this person, even if they haven't forgiven me, and I'm at peace with them. But the ones that you can fix and the ones that you can resolve, you still have the opportunity to do so. You can't do anything about mom who has passed on, and you now feel like I could have, should have, would have, and I should have done something differently. But I want to also ask you to do something that I think is going to be very helpful to processing the mixture of emotions that you're feeling to help you to get to the other side of this guilt. One of the things that's very helpful, and it's a powerful and cathartic method, write a letter to your mom. And it's not a letter that, of course, you're going to give to her, but it's a symbolic letter. The symbolism here is that I'm letting go of these emotions, whatever they are, all the things that happen in the relationship that you want to work it out in that letter. Write that letter for as long as you need to write it. And when you're done with that letter, choose to let go of those emotions by doing some sort of ritual, whether you take it in your backyard and you bury it as symbolic that these are the emotions that I'm burying. I can no longer do anything about them. Or you can burn a candle, light that letter up, and that's symbolic of letting it go. You gotta let it go, because if you don't, what's the point? You're not going to be able to enter into the newness of life without your mom being here. Your life, maybe you have children, I don't know. You have to be able to move on for them as well. Holding on to these guilty feelings are only going to make things worse in your life, and it's only going to lead to other mental health concerns. So I wish you the very best with that. I really hope that works out. Do we have anybody that posted any questions for our guest or comments that they want us to respond to before I let her go? Okay, well, you guys have been very attentive here today. I think that you did an outstanding job. You know, I was trying to hold back my tears, and I think you did absolutely astounding. Again, I want to say that when I saw you and how radiant you look, I knew you had gotten to a place of newness in your life. And I wish you nothing but the very best, you and your children in the future. You are very strong to be here today, to share your journey with so many people who can benefit from hearing this story. And I know we didn't do this subject justice, but of course, naturally, we want to be able to offer you as much support as possible, and stories of real life people are always helpful.
Yes.
So thank you so much for being here.
And when they say time heals, it does, but it soothes.
Yes.
You know, the healing is a lifelong process.
Absolutely.
That time is not a number of years, it's just a soothing. And that cut's there, but it's just, you have some salve over it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I appreciate you being here.
Thanks for the free care.
Pretty well. All right. Well, we're going to do a little bit of a wrap up. Thank you guys for staying on. And again, leave us a comment if you have it. I'd like to leave you with a quote by Anne Lamott. She says, "You will lose someone you can't live without, and your heart will be badly broken. And the bad news is you never completely get over the loss of your beloved. But this is also the good news. They live forever in your broken heart that doesn't seal back up. And you come through. It's like having a leg that's broken that never heals perfectly, that still hurts when the weather gets cold, but you'll learn to dance with a limp." I love that so much. That's so good, because many of us today are dancing with a limp. That's what brokenness looks like. But even in our brokenness, we can still choose healing. We can dance our way to happiness, even with a limp. It's never going to be the same again. I won't even lie to you, but you can create a space for newness. So help is available. Where to find support for groups? Support groups are available, like hospice or hospitals often have support groups. Clergy, pastor, if you belong to a place of worship, even trusted friends, they are great resources. A psychotherapist or a counselor, as our guest indicated as well. These are all helpful things, and you should see on your screen here some helpful national resources that you can tap into that are available 24 hours, 7 days a week. The National Lifeline, SAMHSA, and this great one that I found, My Grief Angels, 1-800-442-HOPE. Again, they're national. They're available to you. Take them down because you never know when you or someone you know might need them. And one of the things we didn't mention about grief is that grief is not just about losing a loved one. It can also be about losing something significant, a job, or even a relationship. All of these things, you go through similar grief stages as well. So I want you to understand that even in those types of losses, it's important for you to process through the emotions that you might feel as well. So in closing, Scripture talks about grief and provides numerous messages of comfort to those who are mourning. As a woman of faith myself, one of my favorites is found in Matthew 5:4, and it reads, "Blessed are they that mourn, for they will be comforted." So my prayer for you is that you will find comfort in whether it's that scripture verse, whether you feel like it's a quote or something else that is profound for you. I truly believe that God himself understood that everyone would go through some form of pain. Christ suffered and died the ultimate debt on the cross for all of us. But in this world, there will be suffering. There will be pain. But oh, how comforted it is to know that even in your grief, you will have comfort. Just believe it, embrace it, and the peace that passes all understanding will transcend your life. If you like today's broadcast, please don't leave without giving us a like, subscribing to our channel, and leaving a comment about the show. We would greatly appreciate all of the support that you can offer. You know, you can also catch all of our previous episodes on IG or on YouTube at The Talk Doctor. And remember, send us those questions to askthetalkdrlive@gmail.com. Tell a friend, tell two, and join us for the fun on Friday. Thank you to all of you who are here today. Thank you to my guest, Dion Whitaker Moore. And I will see you all again next Friday. Take care, everybody.